There's a price for crossing Quentin Tarantino, and that price? Complete erasure from his cinematic universe. No second chances, no apologies, just gone. Today, we're pulling back the curtain on 6 actors who learned this lesson the hard way. You're a Hollywood actor. You've just landed a role in a Tarantino film, the golden ticket that's revived countless careers. The dialogue is razor-sharp, the characters complex, and the director? Well, he's a genius with very specific rules. But here's the thing about Quentin Tarantino that most people don't fully grasp. He doesn't just direct movies, he builds cinematic families. Samuel L. Jackson has appeared in 6 of his films. Uma Thurman became his on-screen muse. Christoph Waltz won 2 Oscars under his direction. Michael Madsen, he's been in 5 Tarantino projects. The pattern is clear. If Tarantino loves you, you're in for life. But if you break his code, whether through ego, unprofessionalism, or creative clash, you don't just lose a gig, you're written out of the story permanently. No callbacks, no reconciliations, just a deafening silence where your name used to be. For 3 decades, Tarantino has built his empire on bloody revenge fantasies, snappy dialogue, and absolute creative control. And when actors challenge that control, they discover that the director's grudges are just as legendary as his films. Let's dive into the 6 performers who crossed the line and never made it back.
Number 1, Lawrence Tierney, the man who exploded on set. Imagine you're 29 years old, directing your first feature film with a shoestring budget and everything riding on this one shot. You've written the perfect role for a grizzled film noir legend, Lawrence Tierney. On paper, it's genius casting. Tierney had that old-school menace, that weathered toughness that screamed authenticity. And then, production started. Reservoir Dogs was supposed to be Tarantino's debut, and it was, but nearly at the cost of his sanity. Tierney wasn't just difficult, he was volcanic. We're talking forgotten lines, explosive arguments with crew members, and constant battles with Tarantino over basic blocking. One particular incident has become industry folklore. During a scene, Tierney and Tarantino got into a screaming match so intense that Tierney stormed off set. But here's where young Quentin showed the backbone that would define his entire career. He didn't plead, didn't negotiate. He followed Tierney outside and fired him on the spot. Later, Tarantino described working with Tierney as dealing with your senile uncle who's off his meds. And that wasn't director-speak hyperbole. Cast members confirmed the chaos was real. Michael Madsen later revealed that Tierney's presence turned every shooting day into a gamble. Would they get through the scene before another blow-up? For a perfectionist like Tarantino, someone who needs complete control over his set's energy and rhythm, this was intolerable. He'd written the character specifically for Tierney, poured his vision into that role. But when the vibe turned toxic, Tarantino made a choice that would echo throughout his career. The work comes first, always. After Reservoir Dogs wrapped, something telling happened. As the film became a cultural phenomenon, with critics praising every performance, and the movie launched Tarantino into the stratosphere, he never mentioned Tierney. No anecdotes in interviews, no tributes, no reflections on working with the noir legend. It was as if Lawrence Tierney had been digitally removed from Tarantino's memory. And that, more than any public feud, sent the message. Cross Tarantino, and you don't just lose future roles, you're erased from the past, too.
Number 2. Bruce Willis, the comeback that never came back. 1994, Bruce Willis was drowning. After the massive success of Die Hard, he'd become one of Hollywood's biggest stars, and then proceeded to star in some of its biggest disasters. Hudson Hawk bombed. Striking Distance flopped. Color of Night was savaged by critics. Enter Quentin Tarantino with a lifeline. Pulp Fiction. The role of Butch Coolidge should have been the beginning of a beautiful friendship. Tarantino had a track record of resurrecting careers. John Travolta was doing Look Who's Talking movies before Pulp Fiction turned him back into a megastar. This could have been Willis's version of that same magic, but something never clicked. See, Tarantino's scripts are sacred texts. Every word matters, every beat is intentional, every pause has purpose. His actors aren't just performing, they're conducting his symphony exactly as written. No improvisation, no "I think my character would say it this way" discussions. You serve the script, not the other way around. Bruce Willis, however, came from the blockbuster world, where stars have power, where improvisation is expected, where actors shape their characters through force of personality. His trademark swagger and sarcasm, the very things that made him a movie star, clashed with Tarantino's obsessive precision. According to people on set, the tension was palpable but professional. Willis brought star power and delivered a solid performance, but he never became part of Tarantino's inner circle. While Samuel L. Jackson and John Travolta bonded with the director and became lifelong collaborators, Willis remained at arm's length. Here's what's telling. In the decades since Pulp Fiction, Tarantino has given countless interviews about that film. He'll gush about Travolta's commitment, Jackson's improvisation within the boundaries, Uma Thurman's transformation. But when it comes to Bruce Willis, silence. Not criticism, just absence. His name gets mentioned as part of the cast, then Tarantino moves on. For a director who treats his favorite actors like a repertory theater company, bringing them back again and again across different films, this absence is deafening. Willis lit up the screen in one iconic Tarantino film, delivered one of the most memorable performances of his career, and then nothing. No callback for Kill Bill, no role in Death Proof, not even a cameo in The Hateful Eight. Willis, for his part, has stayed diplomatic. He's never badmouthed Tarantino publicly, but he's also never treated Pulp Fiction as the career-defining moment most actors would celebrate for decades. There's a mutual silence there, a professional acknowledgement that sometimes great art can be created by people who simply don't mesh. In Tarantino's world, you're either family or you're forgotten. Bruce Willis became the latter.
Number 3. George Clooney. When charm isn't enough. From Dusk Till Dawn seemed like the perfect storm of talent. Tarantino writing, Robert Rodriguez directing, George Clooney fresh off his ER breakthrough, ready to prove he could carry a movie. The film became a cult classic, a gonzo vampire crime mashup that showcased everyone's strengths. And then Tarantino and Clooney never worked together again. But unlike the quiet fade-outs with other actors, this breakup went public. Years after their collaboration, Tarantino gave an interview and dropped a bomb. George Clooney is not a movie star. No build-up, no diplomatic hedging, just a direct shot at one of Hollywood's most bankable names. Tarantino didn't stop there. He challenged people to name Clooney's truly great films, dismissing his post-2000 output as safe and forgettable. Clooney, who normally deflects criticism with his signature charm, actually responded. He admitted he was irritated and defended his work, Ocean's 11, Syriana, Michael Clayton. But the damage was philosophical, not professional. Here's the real issue. Tarantino is a purist who values actors who disappear into roles. He wants transformation, danger, rawness. Think about his go-to performers. Samuel L. Jackson becomes Jules Winfield so completely you forget he's acting. Christoph Waltz transformed into Hans Landa so thoroughly he won an Oscar. But George Clooney, to Tarantino, Clooney brings George Clooney to every role. The charm, the charisma, the red carpet polish, it's always there. He's Hollywood incarnate, smooth, bankable, safe. Everything Tarantino's gritty, violent, morally complex universe is not. After From Dusk Till Dawn, Clooney's name vanished from Tarantino's Rolodex. Not even a whisper of a reunion. And considering Tarantino has worked with Michael Madsen 5 times, brought Kurt Russell back multiple times, and created entire characters around specific actors, that silence is a statement. Clooney went on to win Oscars, direct acclaimed films, become one of Hollywood's most respected figures. His career didn't need Tarantino. But in the ecosystem of Tarantino's cinematic universe, Clooney doesn't exist. He's not an enemy. He's worse. He's irrelevant. The dismissal was complete, not with drama, but with something more cutting: erasure through indifference.
Number 4. Spike Lee, When Two Titans Collide. This wasn't just a casting disagreement or on-set tension. This was a philosophical war fought in public, with racial politics, artistic responsibility, and creative freedom all on the battlefield. Spike Lee has never been subtle about his opinions, and when Jackie Brown dropped in 1997, he came out swinging. His issue? Tarantino's liberal use of the N-word in his scripts. "I'm not against the word, and I use it," Lee said, "but Quentin is infatuated with it. What does he want to be, made an honorary black man?" It was a direct challenge to Tarantino's artistic choices, and Quentin responded exactly how you'd expect, bluntly and without apology. If Spike Lee can't appreciate Jackie Brown, then I'm sorry for him. He has no right to tell any other artist what they can or cannot say. Then came the quote that ended any chance of reconciliation: "Spike needs to shut the F up." But the real explosion came with Django Unchained. Before the film even premiered, Spike Lee condemned it, calling it disrespectful to my ancestors. He refused to watch it, a public boycott of Tarantino's slavery revenge fantasy. Tarantino's response? Even more brutal. "I think his problem is that I'm doing it better than he is. He's just mad because I'm making the black movies he wishes he could make." That statement crossed a line. It wasn't just defending his work, it was claiming superiority over one of black cinema's most important voices, on the exact territory Lee had pioneered. The fallout was permanent. There's been no apology, no reconciliation panel, no "we've matured and moved past it" moment. Both men continue operating at the peak of their craft, but their paths never cross, not in interviews, not at festivals, not even in mutual compliments. What makes this different from Tarantino's other actor conflicts is the public nature of the ideology clash. This wasn't about professionalism or creative control. It was about who has the right to tell certain stories and how those stories should be told. Tarantino has worked with diverse casts, told stories across racial lines, and pushed boundaries throughout his career, but he's never once reached out to collaborate with Spike Lee or anyone from his circle. That's not coincidence. That's a closed door, bolted shut.
Number 5. Steve Buscemi, The Mystery of Mr. Pink. Steve Buscemi delivered one of the most iconic scenes in Reservoir Dogs. His entire opening rant about tipping, "I don't tip because society says I have to," became instantly quotable. Mr. Pink was neurotic, paranoid, and absolutely unforgettable. And then Buscemi disappeared from Tarantino's universe. This one's strange because there was no public feud, no bitter statements, just absence. While Michael Madsen became a Tarantino regular, while Tim Roth returned for Pulp Fiction, Buscemi never got the callback. The most persistent theory involves that famous tipping scene. According to industry rumors and crew member accounts, the dialogue wasn't entirely fictional. It was allegedly inspired by a real conversation where Buscemi expressed similar views during the Reservoir Dogs shoot. Tarantino, who takes service industry workers seriously, he was a video store clerk after all, reportedly didn't appreciate it. One Reddit thread, backed by multiple film assistants over the years, claimed Tarantino once joked that if Buscemi wanted back in one of his films, he'd have to play a waiter. That role never materialized. It was a joke that carried a sharp edge. When asked directly why Buscemi wasn't in Pulp Fiction or Kill Bill, Tarantino gave a cold response. "Sometimes people get one shot. That's the story." One shot. Consider that for a moment. Tarantino brought back Madsen for 5 films. He created entire roles around his favorite actors. He's known for loyalty to his creative family. But Buscemi? One shot. To his credit, Buscemi never complained publicly.
He went on to deliver incredible performances in Fargo, Boardwalk Empire, and dozens of other projects. His career flourished without Tarantino, but fans noticed the absence, especially when even minor Reservoir Dogs actors got callbacks to later projects. In a brief interview, Buscemi once said, "I haven't heard from Quentin in a long time, but I wish him well." It was polite, distant, and tinged with acceptance. The mystery remains, but the outcome is clear. In Tarantino's world, sometimes a grudge doesn't explode. Sometimes it just fades slowly until one actor's name vanishes from the casting board forever.
Number 6. Warren Beatty, the Bill that never was. Warren Beatty was supposed to be Bill, not just any character, the Bill, the villain of Kill Bill, the philosophical assassin with poetic menace and tragic gravitas. Tarantino wrote the part specifically for him, tailored every line around Beatty's legendary cool and intellectual presence. And then it all fell apart. The two met, discussed the character, mapped out the performance. On paper, it was perfect, a Hollywood icon starring in a Tarantino revenge epic. But creative control became the wedge that split them apart. Beatty, himself an acclaimed director and known for his meticulous preparation, started offering suggestions, edits, tonal shifts, ideas for the character's motivation. In any other collaboration, this might be called creative input. In Tarantino's world, it's called interference. According to David Carradine, who ultimately replaced Beatty, the tension was immediate and absolute. Warren was trying to direct the director, Carradine explained, and Quentin doesn't play that. Tarantino never publicly slammed Beatty, but his silence was damning. When asked about the casting change in interviews, he offered only this: "It wasn't going to work. I needed someone who understood it wasn't their story." That quote reveals everything about Tarantino's creative philosophy. Every scene, every word, every camera angle belongs to him. Collaboration, in the traditional sense, doesn't interest him. He needs actors who will serve his vision completely, who trust his choices without question. Beatty's suggestions weren't welcome. They were threats to authorship. And so the part was quietly taken away and handed to Carradine. No announcements, no press drama, just a swift replacement. Carradine later said that Tarantino seemed energized after letting Beatty go, like a weight had been lifted. That energy translated to the screen. Bill became one of cinema's most compelling villains, and Carradine delivered a career-defining performance. Beatty never spoke publicly about the incident. No bitterness, no tell-all interviews, just graceful absence. They've never worked together since, never appeared on the same panel, never crossed orbits again. In an industry built on second chances and redemption arcs, that kind of clean break is rare. But for Tarantino, it was necessary. The words he used, "someone who understood it wasn't their story," became his creative manifesto.
6 actors, 6 different reasons, one consistent pattern. Quentin Tarantino doesn't just make movies, he builds universes with specific rules, and those rules are non-negotiable. Serve the script, trust the director, check your ego at the door. Break these rules, and it doesn't matter if you're a Hollywood legend, a blockbuster icon, or his original collaborator. You're gone. What's fascinating is that Tarantino's grudges aren't always explosive. Sometimes it's a quiet erasure. Your name simply stops appearing in his casting calls. Other times, it's a public philosophical war. But the result is always the same: permanent exclusion from one of cinema's most exclusive clubs. Some of these actors went on to have incredible careers without Tarantino. Bruce Willis became an action legend. George Clooney won Oscars. Steve Buscemi became one of the most respected character actors alive. They didn't need Tarantino to succeed. But here's what haunts these stories: they never got back in. In a career spanning 3 decades and 10 films, Tarantino has repeatedly brought back his favorites: Samuel L. Jackson 6 times, Michael Madsen 5 times, Tim Roth 3 times. That loyalty creates cinematic families that transcend individual projects. These 6 actors learned the hard truth. In Tarantino's world, you get one chance. Wasted, and there's no redemption arc, no reconciliation scene, just silence where your name used to be. So here's the question for you. Do you think Tarantino's creative control makes him a genius or a tyrant? Can great art only come from absolute authority, or is collaboration what cinema needs? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I genuinely want to hear your take on this. And if you found this deep dive fascinating, smash that like button and subscribe, because we're pulling back the curtain on Hollywood's most closely guarded secrets every single week. We've got more untold stories about legendary directors, hidden feuds, and the brutal politics behind your favorite films. Hit that notification bell so you don't miss the next one. Trust me, the stories only get crazier from here. Until next time, remember, in Hollywood, talent gets you in the door, but loyalty, that's what keeps you in the room.